Here's a little story of my background. I grew up an atheist. I always knew in here that if there was a God, and if he did talk to people anciently, he spoke to Moses, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, all these other guys, and Jesus, but he never spoke to me. I've got nothing to run on but hearsay evidence. I'm going to step on some toes here. A lot of people think God's limited to a book at the last written prophets were 2,000 years ago, and so you got to depend on 2 to 4 or 5,000-year-old writings to hear from God. But you can pick up a Ouija board and get direct revelation from the adversary, instantaneous. A few things missing some of these people's paradigms of what they think's going on. Anyway, about the time of my life when I began my conversion, I began to see things that would happen that were statistically improbable. I would see things happening in an order. It was like mathematically, this is almost impossible that these things have happened this way without some type of outside interference or outside programming. So seeing something statistically improbably happen indicates you got something supernatural going on. Now, a little warning, a supernatural can be caused from either side. The adversary can do it, and so can God. In my case, I'd taken a course in the Bible trying to figure out what made people think, Christians think. And it was like, why would people give up working on a Sunday when they can make double time? And why would they want to give their money to a church or give it to some preacher who works one day a week, talking from the pulpit that he might have a book memorized, one book maybe 1,500 pages he calls his Bible, but knows almost nothing of science, mathematics, physics. So anyway, I just couldn't buy any of that. It was like, nothing's adding up. And everybody's supposed to be part of God's law, part of his world. I'm an officer in his court. I'm a deacon. I'm an elder. Well, why is it a deacon in a Baptist church is not recognized as a deacon in a Presbyterian church? Or an elder in one denomination is not recognized as an elder in another denomination? That's just not a house of order. After all, in the military, a colonel's a colonel's a colonel. Doesn't matter what branch of the military you're in, you're still recognized as a colonel or a major or a sergeant or a private, whatever, except in the case of the Navy. So, back in 1984, I used to run every morning. I go about a 5-mile course every morning. And about 3 or 4 times it happened while I was running this course. All of a sudden, it was like biblical verses, commandments began to come into my mind, being impressed upon my being. And at the very instance of this would occur, in groups of 3s, dogs would run up to me just barking and carrying on like they wanted to eat me. I had no fear of the dogs, but at that instance, my entire body was just totally immersed in icy cold chills. Evil, just curdling cold, and it would culminate at the top of my scalp. And then I would feel some kind of a power say no, and they'd scatter. And it was like, oh, okay, you got my attention. Something's going on down here. So I started asking around. And every preacher I talked to said, hey, you're losing your mind. God doesn't talk to people anymore. You need to go see a shrink. Oh, I could tell you a whole lot more stories beyond that. I knew what was going on. And then one night I'd been at a party. Now, like I said, when I would run a particular course. One of the courses I would run, where there would be some dogs who would stay in their yard. They would never come beyond their gates. Even if they were open or closed, there was a fencing there, but they could have gotten over it or under it. It must have been an electronic fence or something. But I'd been at a party, And I walked out in the middle of the road, and the first prayer I ever issued in my life was, God, I don't know who you are or what you are, but I'm looking for you. And at the very instant I'm down on my knees, offering that prayer, these two dogs, which never left their property, came up to me, began to growl and snarl. I stood up, and with a calmness but an authority which came someplace deep within my inner core, the words came up, be gone. And they squealed like they'd been hit with buckshot and ran off with their tails between their legs, yelping. And I'm standing there, whoa. Now, I knew nothing about using the name of Jesus Christ, but there was some type of recognition to my inner being that they recognized and scattered, which I found out years later what that was.